Welcome back to Old School Sports and our Out of the Park Baseball 23 playthrough of the Pittsburgh Pirates. We have just recently completed our 11th season as general manager of the Pirates. The good news is that we have made the playoffs in 9 of those 11 seasons. The bad news is that we have not won a World Series since we joined the Pirates. Lost the World Series 4-2 last year to the Red Sox, and lost the World Series 4-1 this season to the Red Sox. So feeling like we are at a bit of a crossroads in this playthrough after great success with 5 World Series championships in Kansas City, moved to Pittsburgh to a new challenge, where, as I noted, we've been very successful in getting to the playoffs and have finally gotten to the World Series in each of the last 2 seasons, but have not been successful in winning it all, which is the ultimate goal. And after the passing, virtually, of Robert Nutting during this season, his son has taken over as our owner, and he is also penny pinching, which is difficult, like his father was. But in addition, his patience is demanding, which really doesn't bother me. Makes the game a little more difficult, but it's just someone who wants performance and wants performance in a tightened time frame, which is not unreasonable for a boss. But his involvement is also meddling, which is just something that can be a frustrating way to play this game. So we haven't made a decision yet on whether we're going to come back or not. He hasn't made a decision yet on whether he's going to fire us or not. We'll find out the situation shortly. Feel like after 2 straight trips to the World Series and ultimately generating more revenue per game this year than last year, and ultimately delivering a profit of around $60 million this year, pretty close to the huge money that we put up last year, that hopefully there will be another big bump in the budget here in Pittsburgh. That would certainly make it more attractive for us to stick around. So there's a lot to still be figured out. A lot of decisions to make. Final year of arbitration for our ace, Sean Street. Mike Wright, who was disappointing this year after we brought him back at a pretty big $7 million figure for a reliever, is probably gone. Brought him back at that number because we used him as a starter for the first half of the year. Ended up 8-8 with a 5.62 ERA. So that wasn't great. Center fielder Arturo Arellano, arbitration eligible. Left fielder Nakahara. Right fielder Ruacho. Greg Gaylord, longtime reliever, is a free agent. Xavier Rabb, who we picked up in a trade with the Royals, will be a free agent. Sal Valadez, Juan Bin Daoud, and several others, including David Green and Chris Rodriguez, are also arbitration eligible. So will be a lot of decisions to make on what this team may look like next year. But before we potentially get to that point, let's take a look back at the 2048 season for the Pirates. And it was a ultimately successful year. We had a losing record as of late August, and then kind of caught fire in August and September, got over 500 and got to the 3rd wild card spot into the playoffs, where obviously we made a nice run to the World Series. But we still finished tied for 13th, also known as second to last in the National League in runs scored. And in runs allowed, we were 7th. So we were middle of the pack in terms of our pitching. So the team is, as I said, a team that's made the playoffs 8 straight years and has made the World Series 2 straight years. And we've still got a lot of talent on this club. The question is whether or not we as general manager are the person to take this team to the next level or not. And at this point in my career as general manager at the age of 51, virtually, after being a general manager for 27 years, 16 with KC and 11 with Pittsburgh. Is it time for a new challenge, one final challenge in the career, or do we stick with this challenge in Pittsburgh? Because we've virtually got about maybe 10 to 15 years till I am a more traditional retirement age in this game. And we also have about probably 2.5 months to 3 months till the new version of OOTP 24 comes out, when we'll start something brand new. So have an opportunity to continue. The question is, where will it be? In taking a look at our pitching staff, still like what we have here. Sean Street spent some time on the IL, but he's our ace, was 11-4 with a 3.11 ERA. The youngsters, Alex Arroyo, the 26-year-old, 9-14 with a 4.44 ERA, but still profiles as a very good major league starter. And then the rookie Devin Smith, who was brilliant in the playoffs, was 12-10 with a 4.32 ERA, did strike out 213 batters as a rookie. So feel like we've got 3 really good starters with those 3 at the top of our rotation, which alone is probably enough to keep the Pirates as a pretty competitive team going forward. Mentioned Rab, who's going to be a free agent. Ricky Rios, our closer, is also going to be a free agent. Greg Gaylord, our top setup man, a 2-time National League reliever of the year, had probably the worst year since he came and joined us. Yeah, that 4.50 ERA is almost a run worse than he ever was in a Pittsburgh Pirates uniform. As I mentioned, 2-time All-Star, 2-time NL reliever of the year. He's also a free agent, so some decisions to make there. Bobby Astorga, Juan Bin Daoud, Chris Colvin were all solid to really good in the case of the rookie Colvin this year. 75 1/3 innings pitched with a 2.15 ERA and 86 strikeouts for the 6th round pick from 2 years ago in 2046. Guy we drafted out of college as a reliever, figured he'd be up in the majors relatively soon and helping us, and he's done that. And then the lefties, Willie Arenales, Mike Wright, and Danny Robles. We've already re-signed Robles. Wright is going to be a free agent. He had the worst year out of the crew. But feel like we've still got the core of a really good pitching staff here. One guy that I haven't mentioned is a guy who didn't make the 26-man playoff roster, and that would be the pitcher, if I can find him, Sal Valadez, who was a pretty solid 5th starter for us since he came up as a rookie. This is a guy we picked in the 2nd round in 2038 in our first draft with the Pirates. Won 11, 13, and 13 games as a 4th or 5th starter his first 2 years with us. Kind of we're asking him for more this year with the fact that we moved on from our number 1 starter, Luis Longoria, and another longtime starter in Bobby Gonzalez last offseason. And he just did not respond. 8-18 record. Those 18 losses led the National League. 6.33 ERA, 4.70 Sierra. I had a long leash with him. You can see he ended up starting 29 games for us because he was a really good 4th or 5th starter his first 3 years in the majors. So the question with him is, has something happened where he's just not good anymore? Or was it just one of those years? He still has a 6-pitch arsenal, including 5 that we think are major league average or better. Good movement on his pitches, acceptable control. So he's, another guy who could be back in the rotation next year, but certainly at this point need to think about whether there is something wrong with him. Based on our latest scouting report, his stuff and his movement are as good as they've ever been. His control has maybe been notched down a little bit, but if that's the only thing that's going on, a 2+ increase in his ERA seems a bit excessive, but those are the type of decisions we'll be dealing with this offseason, but feel like even though the pitching was only kind of average this year in terms of the runs that we allowed, with Street, Arroyo, and Smith back to top the rotation, feeling like there's still the guts of a really good pitching staff here. Our lineup and our everyday players, however, are a very different situation. Mentioned that we were tied for second to last, tied for 13th in the National League in runs scored this year. And that was a season after we were second in runs scored in 2047. So the offense really fell off a cliff this year. Only one or two players really had horrible seasons compared to 2047, but just about everybody was down. And when you add that all up, it explains our ability to score runs a little bit. We did end up in the playoffs losing two of our starting outfielders, which was not optimal. Alex Ruracho, 27-year-old, former number 4 overall pick, had a down year, hit just 244 with 8 home runs, but he did have 42 doubles. Has not become what we hoped he would. We had hoped he would be a star, and he's a good, solid major league player. 2-time playoff series MVP, but we were missing him for the end of the playoffs. And then Danny Calez is a guy who, in terms of his power numbers, dropped off this year. 26-year-old outfielder did increase his batting average 20 points, but you can see he had 25 homers and just 336 at-bats a year ago. This year in 470 at-bats, he hit 8 fewer home runs. So a lot less power, fewer runs driven in, OPS plus and WRC plus both down. Still a valuable player for us going forward. He's a guy who was a third-round pick 8 years ago at this point. Losing those two guys for the playoffs definitely did not help, but certainly when we get beaten 4-1 by the Red Sox in the World Series, it's hard to say having a average major league right fielder and a perhaps slightly above average major league left fielder would have made that much of a difference. Turning to the position players who were on the roster for the World Series, Andres Coronel, catcher that we picked up in a trade almost 2 years ago. Another respectable year, 260, 6 home runs, was down. Put up a 1.5 WAR, which was also down. Very good defensive catcher who is a acceptable offensive player, but you can see his OPS plus dropped 22 points this year, and we're going to see a lot of similar trends with a lot of our other players. Chris Rodriguez, the backup catcher, 226 batting average, did have 4 homers and 12 doubles for us. Respectable defensively, good personality. Very happy to have him as a backup. David Green, backup utility infielder, really rough year, hit just 204 for us. Can see his WAR was minus 1.7 because although he is versatile defensively, he is not particularly talented defensively. And if he's not hitting, doesn't bring a lot to the table other than the ability to just kind of go out and man a position and hopefully do a competent job defensively. Only 2 years away from as a 25-year-old when he hit 300 with a league best 48 doubles. So not ready to give up on him yet, but certainly expecting more from him going forward. Starting first baseman Lupe Zelaya, 272 average, 33 homers, 94 ribbies, 18 doubles, 84 runs, 107 walks. All solid numbers, but all down from where he was in his first year with us in 2047. And you can see his OPS plus dropped 22 points this year also. Julio Castillo, the young second baseman, rookie of the year last year. Similar situation, batting average still at 261, but 3 fewer home runs, 38 fewer runs driven in, 20 fewer runs scored. His OPS plus was the same, essentially. So ultimately, he was one of the guys who kind of held up his end of the bargain the best among our offensive players. But certainly, we're hoping coming off of Rookie of the Year this season that he would take another step forward rather than just kind of being exactly what he was the year before. Mario De Leon, guy we picked up last offseason in a trade with the Blue Jays, solid utility infielder, hit 283 for us over 113 at-bats. Can play second, third, and short at a respectable level. Luis Linares ended up back as our starting shortstop in the playoffs. You can see he only started 27 games this year. He's wrecked physically, did have some injury issues, and we kind of viewed him with his excellent glove as a kind of super utility guy for us in the infield and a defensive backup. We're not paying him that $22.2 million. Most of that contract stayed with the Cubs when they dumped him on us. He hit 282 for us, league average in terms of his OPS plus and his WRC plus with that glove. Certainly happy to have that type of performance. Jerry Rivera is a guy who took over as third baseman for us, former first-round draft pick. Hit 255 for us with 37 doubles, but just 5 home runs. A little below average in terms of his OPS plus and his WRC plus, but a guy who at least his potential to be a contributor going forward, if not as a starting third baseman, then as a very versatile player who can play a lot of different positions, not necessarily incredibly adeptly, but can play a lot of different positions and have a little bit of a bat as a backup for us. And then Juan Castillo took over as our starting shortstop for Linares this year. Not as good defensively, so when we got to the playoffs, we ended up pivoting Castillo back to third and putting Linares at short. A down year for him offensively, and he has gone in the wrong direction since his first year with us in 2046. We picked him up when he traded away our longtime superstar Isaiah Hill to the Dodgers. Castillo was a young player that we felt had a lot of potential. Certainly fulfilled that potential in his first year with us when he hit 282 with 24 homers. But it's been kind of a steady decline for him over the last couple of years. Hit just 239 this year with 8 homers. And you can see his OPS plus dropped by 6 points this year also. Jerry Drake, young outfielder, only ended up back on the playoff roster when we had those injuries to Ruacho and Calez. Hit 325 in AAA this year. Not a home run hitter, but another player who is pretty versatile defensively and could be a useful utility guy for us going forward. Joel Fields, a young left fielder who had been exceptional in AAA last couple of seasons, had not done much in the majors. He's one of the few guys who had a better year for us this year than last year. Granted, last year he hit a .179 with 3 homers when he was playing part-time in the majors. This year, 283 average, 16 homers, and 318 at-bats for the young left fielder. Great personality. Doesn't bring much to the table defensively. In a perfect world, he's a everyday starter against left-handers and a pinch-hitting threat and backup against right-handers. Yoshitaro Nakahara is the guy who really fell off the map this year. 35-year-old, wrecked physically. Picked him up as a free agent 2 off seasons ago, and he responded with a 264 average, 28 homers, and 360 at-bats. Brought him back this year at $6.3 million, and it was just a disaster. Not surprisingly, given his age and his injury proneness, but 3 trips to the IL. A little less surprising, or a little more surprising, was the fact that even when he was healthy, he was brutal. Ended up hitting a .173 on the season with 5 homers and 185 at-bats. So you can see his OPS plus just plunged this year. He did hit 5 home runs in the postseason for us, so as many homers in the postseason as he did in the entire regular season. But that's going to be a very interesting decision for next year. Arturo Arellano, our center fielder, starting to make some big money and going to have a big arbitration number next year. Guy who is one of the few on the team who was just as good this year as last year. 255 average, 28 homers, 47 doubles, 91 runs batted in, 90 runs scored. Very similar numbers to last season for him offensively. As I said, his number in arbitration for next year is going to be a big one, but he would leave a big hole in our lineup if we move on from him. You can see he's our cleanup hitter, or he was, at least with the injuries that we've suffered to Kelez and Ruacho. And then Jaden Godfrey is a guy who split the year between AAA and the majors. Struggled in AAA this year after being a pretty good contact hitter throughout his minor league career, and hit just 228 in 57 at-bats in the majors. Doesn't have a home run in the majors yet. Very good defensively. Got some good speed, good bunter, decent base runner, good contact hitter. Former first-round pick for us. Think he's got a role on this team in the future, but he's going to have to perform better than he did this year as a 25-year-old rookie to justify a roster spot going forward. So you can see that with the exception of Fields, really nobody had a better year than last year offensively. As we talked about, Arellano and Julio Castillo were about the same, but Zelaya was down, Coronel was down, Juan Castillo was down, Nakahara was way down, and then even among the two injured players, both Kelez and Ruacho were not quite as good as they were a year ago either, and that really added up to a roster that struggled to score runs, particularly the first few months of the season. Got a little bit better down the stretch, as we talked about, when we did what we needed to do to get into the playoffs, but probably going to be a different looking team next year in terms of our everyday players. Feel like there's probably a little bit more work to do there than there is with the pitching at this point. Kind of an obvious statement given that our offense was so bad last year. And with the recap of our top and bottom performers complete, it's time to move on from the pain of the loss in the World Series today and see what the offseason may look like, see what our budget may look like, see what Mr. Nutting Jr. thinks of our performance, and whether he even wants us back next year. So we've got some really good news here, and not something that happens very frequently at all in this game. But latest research has shown that the market size for Pittsburgh has increased to below average. That's still not great, but it is something that happens very rarely in this game, and is certainly a good thing for these Pirates and the organization going forward. So that's positive. Let's see our review of the goals from Mr. Nutting. Happy we made the playoffs. Unhappy that we didn't upgrade at third base. Unhappy that we didn't improve at defense. Happy that we re-signed Danny Robles. Happy that we brought in a locally popular player in Willie Arenales. Happy that we were competitive this year. So it looks like he wants to bring us back next year. He's ecstatic with our performance. Wants us to win the championship, upgrade in right field, improve stolen bases, sign Mike Wright, acquire a top player, increase attendance, and then build a team that can win a championship in the next 6 seasons. So that, I believe, is a little bit of his meddling personality starting to show with this extensive list of owner goals. Before we get too deep into the finances, let's see the new budget. And he did increase it $12 million to $192 million. He set aside $5.35 million for a scouting budget. So that is the meddling part of his personality that I don't love. If you have followed this series closely, you know that I like to invest heavily in the scouting and player development. So the fact that he is messing with the scouting budget definitely does bother me. can see 5.35 million, and I don't have the ability to change it. So that's a huge decline from the 17 million that we had a year ago. And I tend to invest heavily in scouting and development, scouting in particular, because if you have a excellent, in my case, legendary international scout like I do, that is one area of the game where if you've got a great scout, you invest heavily in scouting and scouting international players, you can bring a lot of really good players into your international complex, in addition to the one time a year you get to sign an international free agent or two. Some of those scouting discoveries can become really big players. So the fact that he is meddling to an extent that I have to operate with a really low scouting budget doesn't make me excited. Not going to lie about it. There was also an email that somebody is retired. Let's find out who. Not a big thing. Jorge LeBron, who we signed as a minor league free agent, was only up for 2 games with us, and then actually refused an assignment to AAA, and we cut him. So I was kind of trying to figure out who it was that retired. Quite honestly, didn't really even view him as a member of the team anymore after he refused the assignment back down to AAA, and we released him. But congratulations on a solid career, Jorge LeBron, a guy who was on our team here in Pittsburgh on 2 different stints and began his career in Kansas City when we were the general manager over there. Respectable major league career, certainly. Over 6,000 at-bats, 197 homers, 268 hitter. Was an all-star once and world champion 3 times, twice with us when we were doing the Royals. And then he was a member of the Red Sox team last year that beat our Pirates in the World Series. So we have an interesting decision to make here. As I talked about, I really like the top 3 starters we have. I think we still have a good bullpen. I like our roster, but it certainly needs to be improved in spots. We will have money to do that in free agency, and we'll have a lot more money to do that if we move on from any of the arbitration-eligible players who are looking to make really big money in a few weeks. I like the fact that we got a $12 million boost to our budget to $192 million when we started this playthrough in 2038. I wish I could remember the exact number. I am pretty sure we were 30th in budget and 30th in player payroll. I want to say that our player payroll was like less than $40 million when we started. I think the overall budget was in the low 100s, maybe about the $110 million area. So we've had pretty slow but steady improvement to get to the point where we're 21st in the baseball in our budget. So not quite a middle market team, but we are not scraping the bottom of the barrel anymore. We've improved market size, as we just talked about. We improved fan loyalty. We used to be pathetic there. And we've improved fan interest over the course of the playthrough. Been able to raise ticket prices a lot, get more fans in the seats in general, even though it was not as consistent as a year ago in terms of attendance. We still made more money, which is really what it's all about. So those things are very positive. I don't like meddling owners. I feel at this stage of my career, 26 years as a general manager with 5 world championships, give me the budget and let me do what I think is right with that budget. I think I've earned that. So the fact that he's going to cut scouting by close to 70% on me, when that to me is a core way of how I build a team, and in my opinion, one of the few things that you can kind of differentiate the talent in your farm system through investing heavily in scouting, particularly international scouting, and having a good international scout. Because even the draft, everybody gets 1 pick each round. You know, you may get an extra supplemental pick when you lose a free agent from time to time, but that's all going to even out over the course of the long term in general. Whereas international scouting, I feel like that's an area that can be differentiated. And with the fact that that's been taken away from me, and the fact that we now have 7 goals from ownership who is meddling, and he's still a penny pincher like his dad, it has me certainly thinking about whether there are greener pastures somewhere else, and whether there's maybe a new challenge we should be thinking about. So there's part of me that thinks it's crazy to even flirt with going somewhere else after a $16 million bump in our budget last year. We got a $12 million bump in our budget this year. As I mentioned, $192 million is getting close to being double of where we were when we started with this playthrough. We just moved our market size up. Earlier, we moved up our fan loyalty. Our fan interest is still sound. And we've made the playoffs 8 straight years, and 9 out of the last 10 been in the World Series back-to-back seasons. This team is still potentially a player or two, which we have money to add in the offseason, and a lucky break or two in terms of bounces and injuries away from being a championship team. So there's definitely an opportunity to win a title here in the coming years with this team that I've built. But the fact that Mr. Nutting Jr. is already showing that meddling and controlling personality is a red flag to me, and I am at least going to flirt with the available jobs that are out there for me at this stage in my career. And is there something interesting for me to pursue? So we're going to at least take a quick look at these opportunities that are out there. I'm looking for something that's going to be a challenge. Not looking for joining the Yankees. Not that that's an option. Diamondbacks have the as low fan interest as anybody. Small market size. Team that was 72-90 this past year. Looking at the front office, controlling fiscal personality for ownership, I guess that is a step up from penny pinching. Got the 7th best minor league system in the game. Although both Kansas City and Pittsburgh were total rebuilds. Kansas City had a good minor league system when I took them over in 2022. Pittsburgh, I would say, had a very good minor league system, even though the budget was horrible and the roster was horrible at the major league level when I took them over. So in a perfect world, I think I want a team whose minor league system is not quite as good. We'll see what the options are out there. Orioles are going to be tough for me as a Yankees fan to get excited about, but let's at least take a look at them. Low budget team near the bottom. They did have a winning record this past year, only two wins less than the Pirates. Ownership not great, but not horrible. Hands-off involvement, reasonably patient. The fiscal policy is controlling, but again, that's a step up from the penny pinching, Nutting and Nutting Jr. 6th best minor league system though, so that one is also would be interesting, but I almost want something that I think is a bigger challenge. Red Sox have been in the World Series the last 2 years, as we talked about, beating the Pirates. Big market, huge fan interest. Cubs are a divisional rival of ours, huge market, pretty good fan interest. Had a crappy season this year, 73-89. But they're still a huge budget team, big player payroll. A lot of money to play with this offseason. Really good situation in terms of the market dynamics. Bad minor league system. I just don't know. on the challenge level, I think that's a easier situation than Kansas City and Pittsburgh have been. The Reds, another team in our division, going to be hard for me to stay in the NL Central if I do move on. Won the division this year. We did take them out in the playoffs in that 3-game series in Cincinnati, where we won both games. Front office ownership actually looks really good. Lenient patience, hands-off involvement, economizer, fiscal personality, which is a big step up from penny pinching. 11th best farm system in the game. Would prefer to end up in a different division than the one that I've spent the last 11 seasons in. So Cubs and Reds, not all that interesting. Rockies, bad year, 75 and 87. Looking at the front office, budget is lower than the Pirates at this point, although their player payroll is high. Not investing a lot in scouting and development. Ownership, not great. Controlling fiscal personality, which is an improvement. Player development, 18th. So a mediocre farm system. That could be one to think about. I've never played with the Rockies before in OOTP, or actually I don't think in any type of virtual video game or anything. They seem the most interesting to me. I mean, I think the whole building a team in Colorado is interesting, simply because if you've watched my Kansas City and Pittsburgh playthroughs or other playthroughs, I tend to try to build excellent pitching staffs that are very good and very deep. And obviously Colorado, the question is whether you can really do that, or do you build a great pitching staff, and just because of the dynamics of that park, I would still think that good pitchers in Colorado should perform better than bad pitchers in Colorado, but that could be a interesting challenge. Astros and the Angels, very big markets, ton of fan interest, big budget teams, I would assume. I don't think there's a lot. Actually, yeah, Astros, pretty big budget, decent farm system, not much of a challenge there, at least for what I'm looking for. Angels, I'm guessing, are going to look similar. 88 wins last year. Bad farm system, so that does work in their favor as being an interesting challenge, but 6th in budget, 6th in player payroll. They've got tons of money to spend this offseason, coming off of an 88-win season. Decent ownership, that meddling personality. That's what I'm trying to get away from. I think with the huge budget, it wasn't necessarily the challenge I was looking for anyways, despite the fact that they do have, I think, the weakest farm system we've looked at. The Marlins, I did a playthrough with the Marlins in OOTP 22. Obviously, it's a very different team now here in the 2048 mythical universe. Coming off of a bad season, low budget, really bad payroll, pretty fan interest. Ooh, ownership is interesting. Unmerciful patience. That's, I think, as bad as it can get. So, still David Sherman. Wow. He wants results immediately. Charitable fiscally, normal involvement. Second best minor league system. That probably takes him out. Was thinking it might be something to think about, but just so much talent at the minor league level that right now it seems like Colorado is the only team in play if we leave Pittsburgh. Hopefully there's something else that I think is interesting as we go through the rest of these teams. So on to the Twins, and looks like they were awful last year. Horrible in terms of some of their on-field metrics. 57 and 105 record. Low budget, low payroll, fan interest pretty bad. Decent market size and fan loyalty, but you can see attendance last year was brutal. Meddling, demanding, controlling, ownership. Honestly, though, we already have meddling and demanding, and they are only controlling rather than penny pinching. So Luis Rice is actually a step up from Robert Nutting Jr. in terms of someone to work for. the number one minor league system in baseball, though. Would be interesting and cool to take that over with 3 top 15 prospects and then another 3 guys in the top 80. But as I mentioned, both of the teams we haven't taken over a number one farm system, I don't think, but I'm wanting something potentially that I can really mold more myself as a test. The Mets just played them in the playoffs. Astronomical market size, huge fan interest, huge budget. I wonder if Steve Cohen is still around at this point. No, Travis Trotman. But second biggest budget in the game, almost $400 million. Would be fun. $164 million available for free agents. Wow. I love the fact that it's basically a blank slate to do whatever you want with that kind of money. Kind of interesting. 13th best minor league system. Perennial playoff team in the National League, just won 98 games. Would be a much happier job than working for the Pirates, but I don't think it's what I'm looking for. A's, this one's got some promise maybe. They won the division last year, 90-win team, despite the fact that they have one of the lowest payrolls in baseball. Actually, the lowest payroll in baseball, the second lowest budget. But it looks like they are trending in a good direction. 5th best minor league system, a 90-win team with a great minor league system, even though some of the market dynamics are probably similar to Pittsburgh, a little less interesting. San Francisco looks like they're coming off a 100-win season, although our Pirates team did take them out in the playoffs. But top 10 budget, second in player payroll. They're going to have money to spend, huge fan interest. 17th best minor league system. Owner controls player development and draft budget. So they are an interfering owner. So that's, I think, worse than the meddling that we would be dealing with. So I don't think that's a huge challenge. In terms of the market dynamics and the team that you have in the minor league system. Definitely a challenge to deal with that interfering owner, but this is still a game, and I want to have some degree of fun while playing it, and that ruins the fun for me. Tampa's going to be tough as a Yankees fan, but they're a bad team, 61 wins. Ownership, again, controlling fiscal personality is a step up. Normal involvement is a big step up from Mr. Nutting Jr. 20th ranked minor league system, though. I don't love the idea of playing a team that's going to be going up against my Yankees all the time. It's interesting. They got the same exact budget as the Pirates. That's because I'm looking at the Pirates now. Thought I was still looking at Tampa. Let's go back to the available jobs in Tampa's financial situation. Okay, yeah, they're last in budget, near the bottom in player payroll. And they do have a bad minor league, borderline bad minor league system. I think the Rockies were 18th. These guys are 20th. So they're in the same neighborhood. One great prospect with Mike Moreno. The cupboard's kind of bare. Fan interest is as low as any of the teams. You can see they've only had one winning season in the last decade. The budget has been trending in the wrong direction. Focused on a rebuild. Still Stu Sternberg is the owner. I hadn't looked at the name when I came over here. I gotta think about it. As a Yankees fan, I don't really want to play with the Rays, but I think they and the Rockies are at least in the mix. In the mix, if we decide to leave Pittsburgh, still haven't decided. Look at the last couple teams. The Rangers bad on the field with 71 wins. Going to be hard to justify this. Actually, they're only middle in terms of pay budget and player payroll, but an above average market, above average fan loyalty, good fan interest, okay ownership. Worst farm system in baseball, though. That at least puts him in the mix. You can see only one top 100 prospect, and he's 64th in baseball, and he's already at the major league level. So the guys who are actually in the minors, they don't have any top 100 prospects. Mike De La Paz, it says he's at the majors, but I don't. He's on the roster, but he must have brought him up very late in the year, and then he didn't actually pitch for them. Looks like a decent pitching prospect. I don't think he's quite ready for the majors yet. Did only pitch 3 games down in AAA last year at Round Rock. But looks like he could be a respectable major league pitcher. So that one's interesting because I get the total bare and bereft farm system that I was talking about. But I still have a $236 million budget, a lot of money to spend, really solid market dynamics, team that had 8 straight winning seasons and was a perennial playoff team until this past year. I'd say they're in the mix just because I feel like I need another team that's in the mix on top of Colorado and Tampa, but it's hard to think that Texas is the right challenge. And then last but not least, the Nationals. One of the worst teams in the NL this past year. Average market size and loyalty, good fan interest. Bottom half of the league in terms of budget and player payroll, but still $22 million more than the Pirates. So a lot of money to spend this offseason. Ownership is really interesting. They're really good in terms of their patience and their involvement. Not great in terms of the controlling personality and a focus on profit rather than winning. Third best minor league system. That kind of takes them out. I thought there might be something there. So we're at a point now where I think it's, do I stick with the Pirates? Or do I move on to a new challenge with Colorado, Tampa Bay, or Texas? And that's what I've got to give a little bit of thought to right now. So thinking about the pros and cons of each of the options in front of us as we get closer to decision time. So the $192 million budget is as good as it's ever been. Market, fan loyalty, and fan interest dynamics trending in the right direction. And it's a team that's made the playoffs 8 straight years, 2 straight World Series appearances, and have got 3 young studs in their mid-20s at the top of the rotation. So those are the things that make it a little bit less of a challenge. The ownership, with his meddling and penny-pinching ways, is a big challenge. We've already talked about, I don't love that I don't control some of my budgets. And then player development here is a challenge. The 24th ranked minor league system. We were 26th at the start of the year, so we're moving in the right direction. But certainly one of the weaker farm systems in baseball going forward is going to make it an interesting challenge. Moving on to the Rockies, 75 win team, so less successful than the Pirates. Ownership, not great. Controlling fiscal personality, demanding in terms of patience, while still Charlie Monfort at age 88. So probably will be a change in ownership at some point early in the potential tenure there, which could be good, could be bad, add some uncertainty to the situation. I'd say ownership a little better than with the Pirates. The budget of 186 million though is actually lower than the Pirates right now. The Pirates were 21st in baseball. The Rockies are 23rd. So they're bordering on a low budget team, below average market size. Still decent fan loyalty, fan interest okay. And then as we talked about a while back, 18th ranked minor league system. So below average by the definition of below average, but probably not horrible. Top prospect is in rookie ball, Cameron Miller, a guy who was picked 33rd overall, looks like with a supplemental pick this past season. And he didn't play in rookie ball, so I wonder if he was hurt or hopefully they signed him. It says he's with Colorado. Oh, he didn't sign till September 2nd, so he basically missed the entire season of rookie ball, and he's almost 19 years old. So that's probably not optimal in terms of his development. But definitely a mediocre minor league system. And then the intangible is building a team in Colorado, especially when I like to build a team around pitching. So, and they also have not a lot of money for free agents. And their scouting and development budgets are really low. So if I take that little bit of money that's available for free agents and put it into scouting and development, still can't get anywhere near the neighborhood that I'd like to be. A lot of guys with some big contracts, big arbitration number coming up. I think the Rockies are promising, but we got to see what the other teams look like. So we will move on to Tampa Bay. 61 win team, so they were even worse than the Pirates or the Rockies. Similar to the Rockies, you've got a similar personality owner who's also in their late 80s, and Stu Sternberg. So meh ownership, similar to the Rockies, and you're going to have an ownership transition likely early in your tenure, which is a bit of a wild card. Player development 20th, so that is the same neighborhood as the Rockies, and actually, similar neighborhood to the Pirates, a little better than the Pirates, but same neighborhood. And finances are bad. Lowest payroll in baseball or lowest budget in baseball at $126 million. So this one is definitely a good challenge, similar to the Rockies. And last but not least are the Rangers. 71 win team, so the second worst, close to Colorado, 10 games better than Tampa Bay. Ownership, I'd say probably the best ownership with the leniency as far as patience. 3 of the 4 are controlling in terms of fiscal personality. Nutting is obviously penny pinching. Normal involvement, priority on profit isn't great. I'd say Nutting Jr. is the worst of the owners. I think that Colorado and Tampa Bay are very similar. They may actually be identical. I'd have to look at that closely. Texas maybe a little better. So probably the best ownership situation, best market size, fan loyalty, and fan interest. The $236 million budget is 16th in baseball, and it is $44 million more than Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh actually has the second biggest budget of any of the teams that we're talking about, but the Rangers are $44 million more than that, have some money available for free agents. The real attraction here is that horrible minor league system that's 30th and really has nothing to kind of rebuild that from scratch. That's interesting. The issue to me, though, is that you're going to have a lot of money and you've got a market that you can kind of really crank on. So you're going to be able to put some money into scouting and development right from the start, most likely, especially if you trade away a salary or two. I think there's an opportunity to kind of supercharge this rebuild compared to the other teams, simply just by virtue of them having so much more money than Pittsburgh or Colorado and certainly Tampa Bay. So it's decision time. All four of these teams have below average farm systems. All four of these teams have mediocre to bad ownership. The Pirates are by far the most successful on the field of these teams. I think from a quick look, they've got the best roster, especially with those three good pitchers in their mid-20s. They actually have the second highest budget of any of these teams at $192 million. And I don't want to deal with a meddling owner at this stage in my career, so we are going to be taking our talents from Pittsburgh. It has been a great run. Actually, it has not been a great run. It has been a good run, my friends in Pittsburgh, with 9 playoff appearances in 11 years, 8 consecutive playoff appearances. That streak still continues, whether or not I'm involved next year or the chance to extend that streak continues. Appearances in the World Series each of the last couple of years. But I don't think it's as good a challenge as some of these others right now. And I also just don't want to play with a meddling owner who's not going to let me play the game the way that I want. So the Pirates and the Nutting family, after 11 seasons, have sucked the zest for life in Pittsburgh out of me. We move on, disappointed that we could not bring the team a championship. And that is a red mark on my resume as a general manager, but perhaps in greener pastures and different and new pastures, I'll once again be raising the World Series trophy. And perhaps the Pirates will be raising a World Series trophy sometime in the next couple of years without me involved in the organization, which would be nice also. But we are moving on from the Pittsburgh Pirates. So the question is, where are we going to go? And it will not be to the Texas Rangers. I do love the fact that they have the worst minor league system in baseball. But they've got the most money by $44 million in terms of a budget of any of the teams that we're looking at. They've got the best market size, the best fan loyalty, the best fan interest. They've got the best ownership situation. As much as I want to rebuild a horrible farm system, the fact that they've got a decent amount of money to spend, and again, if you look at the salary situation, got a player option. Actually, that's next. No, that is this year. There's a player option that has to be decided. Right fielder Josh Hurd, good power hitter, obviously, but 31 years old, coming off a year where he hit .219 with 21 homers, 168 strikeouts. Right fielder with a good arm, walks a lot, strikes out a ton, hits home runs, not a good contact hitter. Reminds me of Joey Gallo, and as a Yankees fan, that is not meant to be a positive thing. So can opt right out of that contract and clean up another $26 million. And that basically lets you totally rebuild scouting and development immediately. I just don't think the Rangers are as good a challenge as either of the other two teams. So we're going to try to go somewhere where we can really be involved in a different kind of challenge. So that leaves us with two choices: Tampa Bay or Colorado. I think the owners are exactly the same. I want to figure that out right now. I know they're both old. Monfort's 88, demanding, controlling, normal, balanced. Remember that for me. Demanding, controlling, normal, balanced. And if I could click properly and go to Tampa, demanding, controlling, normal, balanced, 89 years old. So it is the exact same ownership situation. Pretty mediocre ownership that's in their late 80s. Probably going to have a ownership transition in both of those teams over the first couple of years of your tenure, which is not great. Quite honestly, I would think that in the real world, a manager with the resume that I have at this point would not take a job with an owner that's not that great and that's almost 90 years old, because you know that you're going to have the whole randomness of that ownership transition likely sometime in the first 2 or 3 years, which, depending on who you get in there, could totally blow things up completely and make you want to start over with a new team. I've had a 16-year tenure and an 11-year tenure, certainly intending to have a long tenure with what I think will be the final stop of this career. But neither of those ownership situations is great, but they are basically essentially identical. So no difference there. Moving on to the financial metrics, the Rockies are third of the four teams in terms of the budget at $186 million, but Tampa Bay is $126 million. So there's a big difference there. Market size below average, fan loyalty above average, and fan interest is a 67. So Colorado, in terms of some of the economic factors, is a better situation than Tampa Bay, where you've got the lowest budget in baseball, small market size, average fan loyalty, and pretty bad fan interest at this point. And you've only had one winning season in the last decade, as opposed to Colorado, where you've only had 2 losing seasons in the past decade, although one of them is the season that you just had. But a 75-win Colorado team is still better than a 61-win Tampa Bay team. Player development is basically the same. Colorado is below average, 18th. Tampa Bay, also below average, 20th. So, I mean, they're basically right there. So based on the numbers, Tampa Bay is a bigger challenge. You've got a much lower budget. You've got a farm system that's slightly worse. You've got a team that's worse on the field right now. And you've also got market dynamics that are a little bit worse. So there's no question that Tampa is a bigger challenge. They're offering $1.7 million for 3 years. The Rockies offering $1.6 million for 3 years. The Rockies are actually, other than the A's, not shockingly, the Rockies are tied for the lowest offer out there. But sadly, I think that may still be a raise for me coming out of Pittsburgh. Where does it? Yeah, 1.5 million is what I'm making now, in Pittsburgh, which is where I peaked in Kansas City also. Um, so I could get a nice raise, 200,000 in Tampa or 100,000 in Colorado. I get a raise either way. The things that work against Tampa, outside of what I've talked about, are that I am a Yankees fan, and I don't necessarily love the idea of playing against the Yankees. I know it's weird because it's mythical 2048, but 40 plus years as a fan of the Yankees will make you do strange things. And then the other big thing against Tampa in my mind is that, as I said, I did a Miami Marlins save in Out of the Park Baseball 22. I actually started this channel with that. So I've done a small market team with poor dynamics in Florida that's going up against bigger market teams. In my bid for maybe doing that right now is a little lower. In Colorado, as I talked about, I really do like the fact that it's just such a different place in terms of the dynamics of the elevation and the thin air and the home runs in that park. You can see it right here. They were fourth in the league in runs scored, 27th in the league in ERA. Is there a way to build a pitching staff that can improve that dynamic? That's intriguing to me, particularly since I, as we've talked about, tend to build my teams around pitching. So Tampa Bay is more challenging in terms of the finances. Colorado wins because of the intangibles. We'll also take a look at the divisions. I think both of these teams are in a pretty tough spot in terms of the financials in their divisions. The Rays, I think, are going to be, when they're obviously worst in baseball. I just can't remember exactly what Baltimore looks like financially, even though I probably looked at them 20 minutes ago. But the Red Sox and Yankees are obviously going to be up there. Yeah, the Red Sox 5th in budget. The Yankees are 3rd in budget. Baltimore is 27th, so Baltimore is in a tough spot. And then how has Toronto evolved in the game? They should be pretty high. They're middle, 15th. That's a little surprising given what a big city Toronto is. But you've got, 2 of the top 5 teams in baseball that you're competing with, a middle-of-the-pack team, a lower market team that's still better than you, and then you're the worst in baseball. So it's a challenging division for Tampa. But I think the division is also pretty challenging for Colorado. The Dodgers, even though they're coming off a bad year, we'll wait at the end. We'll look at them first because we know that the payroll is going to be crazy. Actually, it's not as crazy. They're 11th in budget, so they have really slipped back. Oh, look at this performance by the Dodgers. 10 straight losing seasons. Despite the fact that they still have an astronomical market size and extreme fan loyalty. What's their farm system look like? 10th. I was going to say that, not that they're offering me a job, but rebuilding the Dodgers would almost be interesting. So they're 11th in budget. I was just assuming they were still going to be great. San Francisco, I know we just looked at, but I forget where they are. So they're a top 10 team in budget. What's San Diego look like these days? That's an important one to think. Oh, San Diego Padres, the number 1 budget in baseball at over $400 million. Astronomical market size, extreme fan loyalty, and perfect 100 plus fan interest. So got the top payroll in the top budget in baseball, 2 borderline top 10 in San Francisco and the Dodgers. And then what do the Diamondbacks look like at this point? They're 28th, so they're weak. So in the case of Tampa Bay, you are the worst in the division in terms of your financial situation. In the case of Colorado, you are 2nd worst. But with a budget of 186 million, 23rd in baseball, the three teams that you're chasing are first with the Padres, ninth with the Giants, and 11th with the Dodgers. And the Dodgers, with that market, certainly can move back up if they get competent ownership. So it's challenging divisions for both of these teams. I almost think with three borderline top 10 teams, with the three California teams, that the Rockies situation may be a little more challenging. But then when I think about the fact that the Rockies budget is better than the Diamondbacks, and the Rays budget is literally the lowest in all of baseball, it's hard for me to make an argument that Colorado is in a worse situation than Tampa Bay. So I honestly don't feel like there is a perfect landing spot here for me. I find it unrealistic that at the age of 51, with 21 playoff appearances in 27 seasons and 5 World Series championships, that anyone with that resume would go work for someone in their late 80s with a mediocre ownership personality without a very clear ownership succession situation. Obviously, in the real world, those are the kind of conversations that people can have and you would understand before taking a position. But in this mythical OOTP world, don't know what the ownership situation in terms of the succession in Colorado and Tampa Bay look like. Will it go to a family member? What is that family member's personality? Or do they plan on selling immediately? We just don't know. So I don't think in a real life situation without a lot of assurances that Old School Sports would be going to either of those teams. But this is also not real life. In Texas, I think, is the easiest of these playthroughs. Pittsburgh, I think, is the second easiest, despite the bad ownership. You got a good team. You got the second highest budget. And I just am kind of done playing for the Nuttings. So it comes down to Colorado or Tampa Bay with those odd ownership situations. Tampa Bay is a bigger challenge financially. But I'm intrigued by building a team in Colorado. And I don't really want to be playing in the AL East against the mythical Yankees of 2049. And Colorado still has a well below average budget, 23rd in baseball, mat ownership, coming off of a 75-win season, below average farm system. There's a lot of negatives about the Rockies, and trying to build a pitching staff that can potentially not just exist, but can potentially maybe somehow excel in that high elevation in the thin mountain air around Denver, is intriguing to me. So Old School Sports is taking our talents not to South Beach, but to Colorado, where we are going to become the new general manager of the Colorado Rockies. Oh, and this is awesome. We've just joined the team. It says next season is very important. If I don't see progress, changes will be made. And unfortunately for you, they are going to start at the top. So this could be a very quick playthrough. Charlie Monfort does have a bunch of goals for us. We'll take a quick look at those before we finish up the episode, and then we'll take a true deep dive on the team next episode. But he wants us to get to 500, wants us to upgrade at catcher, extend Jamal Cohen, guy who did hit 45 home runs. But again, that's not a profile of a 45 home run hitting player in Kansas City or Pittsburgh. I know that from the last 26 years or 27 years at this point, 27 years of playthrough that, there's some Colorado influence in those numbers, wants us to increase attendance and build up the team to reach the playoffs in the next few years. So we've got some lofty goals ahead of us. We've got a difficult ownership situation with an 88-year-old that's probably not going to be around all that long, and is putting us on notice on our first day on the job that we need to do better. Little unrealistic that he expects more from us, and that if we don't see progress, they're going to have to start at the top for a player or for a general manager in his first year under contract. One of those perhaps somewhat unrealistic bugs in the game. But that's the situation that we're dealing with. We are on to the Colorado Rockies after a long run in Kansas City and a long run in Pittsburgh here in OOTP 23. We are going to continue our career in Denver as general manager of the Colorado Rockies. And we will jump in and take a look at what this new team actually looks like in great detail in our next episode when we kick off the Colorado Rockies series. Until then, thanks so much for watching, and hope you have a great day.